To take things to the next level with raspberry jelly donuts. Oh, now this is the donut that everybody recognizes. It's a filled donut, but it does start with a yeast dough. So to start the dough off, I have 2/3 of a cup of milk, and I've heated it to just above body temperature. Pour that into a mixer, and for the yeast, 2 1/4 teaspoons. That's the equivalent of a single packet, and I use the instant dry yeast. I'll add to that 1/3 of a cup of sugar. This doesn't really make the dough terribly sweet, but it does make it tender. And I'll add 3 eggs, and about 1/4 teaspoon of grated nutmeg. Now 3 1/2 cups of all-purpose flour, and a teaspoon of salt. Now, I'll start kneading this on low speed and immediately start adding 1/2 cup of softened butter, so it does make it a rich, tender dough. It takes about 3 to 4 minutes of kneading to really smooth out the dough and develop the glutens that'll hold in the yeast as the donuts rise up. There we go. You can really see it's smooth and elastic and easy to handle. Now, I'll just put a little bit of oil in my bowl and I'll drop in this dough. Now, this dough can rise at room temperature for 2 hours, or if you're planning ahead, you can actually pop it in the fridge overnight and let it slowly rise up. You want to cover it, and I have a batch that I've let go overnight, already chilled. You can really see the difference. I'll put this one in. I'll get a little bit of flour and then turn the dough out. Remember, I put 1/2 cup of butter in there, so it does set up a little bit as it chills in the fridge. But I do find it makes the dough easy to roll out. When rolling your donut dough, you want to roll it out until the dough is about 1/2 inch thick. Just using a plain cookie cutter, push straight down and lift out. This recipe makes 12 donuts. So now, they have to rise up for a good hour until they almost double in size. I'll let these take a little rest here. You want to cover them with plastic. And I have a batch of donuts that I cut out about an hour ago. So you can see they've started to lift up a little bit. That's the yeast going back to work, and the dough is quite soft. So they're ready for the fryer. Now this time, I'm using a tabletop fryer to show you a different option. You want the oil to be at 350, and you don't want to crowd the basket. So I'll drop in 2, set the lid on, and just gently set them into the oil. And because of the size of these yeast-raised donuts, they take a good 4 minutes on each side. While these are cooking, I can get my cinnamon sugar ready. So I'll get 1/2 cup of sugar in a pie plate and add to that about 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. Now, give these a little flip over so they can continue cooking on the other side for another 4 minutes. Oh, there's that happy sizzle. Just give that a little stir. When I dusted my apple fritters with the icing sugar, I had to wait until they cooled to room temperature, so the icing sugar didn't melt. But if you want granulated sugar to coat the outside of your donut, you have to dip them while they're still hot from the fryer. Beautiful donuts. And while still hot from the fryer, you want to dip those donuts in the cinnamon sugar and give them a good coating. And then set them on the cooling rack to cool completely before it's time to fill them. Raspberry-filled donuts have to be my absolute favorite, and I opt for a seedless jam. I've got my piping bag, and you can see it's fitted with a special tip. This is actually designed for filling eclairs and donuts. And I'll give this a little twist and tuck it into the tip before I spoon in the jam. That way it won't run out the bottom. And I find for a dozen donuts, I go through about 1/2 cup of jam. Give it a little twist at the top, and now I can untwist the bottom, and I'm ready to fill. And you just push the tip right into the center and push in that jam filling until you feel resistance. I think I got a good 2 tablespoons of jam in that one. So just cut into that. You can see how beautifully tender it is. And just look at all the jam I was able to fit into the center of that donut. And it's the delicate dough that allows that to happen. So be prepared to be messy, but this certainly is a treat and worth the effort.